Well, hello, friend, and welcome to another episode of Van Life Living in the Ark. Well, I'm out here in this park, and I have a beautiful view. It's been a rainy day, but it rains off and on, and I've kind of got a patch of dry, right? So I thought I'd stop and do a video, and it's in this perfect place because of all these dead trees in the background, and then you have trees that are growing up to take their place. Like this used to be a big pine tree area, but the particular type of pine got diseased and most of them have died out, and now there's these oaks that have sprung up everywhere that are going to replace them. So, you know, it's kind of neat the way nature works. And I kind of see God working that same way too, right? Because sometimes us people, we become these dead trees, right? We become dead to Christ. And Jesus referred to it as dead limbs, right? So it really doesn't matter how you see it, but when you talk about it from Jesus' standpoint, instead of talking dead trees, you talk dead limbs, because Jesus referred to that he was the vine and the Father was the gardener, and that we were the branches, and at the end of the age, the Father would prune off the dead branches, meaning the ones that weren't fruitful. And so Jesus did talk about that. And Paul also, even though I almost only exclusively talk about Jesus on here, other than a couple things every now and then, Paul also said, faith without works is dead. So if we don't do anything with the faith that we've been given, then it dies. And then our lamps don't have oil, and then when the storms come, our houses fall, right? That's kind of a combination of a few different things he said all in one. Because, you know, he did say that, you know, if you hear the things that I say and you put them into practice, you will be like one that builds your house on the rock. But if you're one that you hear these sayings and do not put them into practice, that you'll build your house on sand. And when the storm comes, the foundation's going to wash out and your house is going to fall. So he was talking about when we have faith to overcome circumstances and storms in our lives, right? But he was also talking about the end of the age. And that's the reason sometimes I put all these parables together, because they all have the same meaning in a specific kind of way, because Jesus said at the end of the age that we would have to light our, that it was going to get dark and we were going to have to light our lamps, and those that did not get oil put in their lamps were going to run out of light. They were going to run out of oil, which means your light goes out, which means you don't enter the kingdom, because Jesus never said that if you say you believed he died for you, that you would get this kingdom in your death. He promised you that you would get it if you did the things he asked and abide in what he said. And so that's the truth. The truth isn't what the church is saying. The truth is what Jesus said. So I encourage you to go buy a Bible with what Jesus said and read, and that way you can become a fruitful limb or a fruitful tree, in the case here where they're all dying, right? Because a storm came called disease or bugs or something. I don't know what it was exactly, but something killed all the trees. So, however, there are trees remaining. You will see some evergreens in the background and a couple in the remaining area. So there was a couple of them that evidently built their house on the rock. And so they've seemed to have survived the blight, but most of them did not. And I think we're going to find that that's quite often the case with the church, because Jesus talked about abiding in the law and rising in the spirit of it. And Jesus actually rewrote, even though he said the 10 commandments, he said you had to hang all the laws and the prophets on only 2 commandments, and that one was like the other, right? So because he said that, he meant it. Because he also said, ye are gods. And because it was written into Scripture, it can't be undone. Now, that doesn't mean that you're gods with a capital G. It means you're gods with a lowercase g, right? My Father is a God with a capital G. So he's our Father. But what we do to our neighbor, we do to our Father. Because, well, when somebody does something to your children, I imagine it feels like it's being done to you, right? So that's what Jesus was trying to get you to understand. And he did say that offenses must come, but woe to those who bring them. So I'm not saying that offenses shouldn't come, because he said they must come. But then he did say woe to those who bring them. So it is important that we are following what Jesus said, not what the world or the church tells us. Because Jesus said something else. Jesus said, before me, the kingdom suffered violence and was taken by force, but after me it won't. Right? So what does that mean? Have you really thought about that? Because he went as far as saying that those that already had a seat at the table in the kingdom were going to be tossed out of the kingdom, and they were going to have to enter it rightly because he came. Do you understand that? You see, people aren't talking about what Jesus said. They're often talking about what the church said, and the church isn't telling you all of what Jesus said. Because he did say that at the end of the age that his disciples would owe twice the debt. Right? So, not meaning that the ones that abided in what he said, those that have been out feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and visiting people in prison, and loving those that don't love them, and forgiving others their debts so that they can be forgiven theirs, well then, those are the ones that are going to enter the kingdom. But Jesus said that a lot of people that said they knew Jesus weren't going to enter the kingdom because they weren't going to do what he asked, and they wouldn't understand what he was talking about, and he would say that he didn't know him at the end of the age. So it's important that you read Jesus, not listen to what other people said about what Jesus said. And I'm also going to clue you in on the fact that Jesus said something else. People are waiting for Jesus to return, and was thinking that this last year being a Shemitah year, that Christ was about to return. But first, before Jesus returns, Judas has to. Because the first will be last, and the last will be first. Now, a lot of people don't understand that Jesus and Judas created Yom Kippur. But they did. So if you go look at the ceremony of Yom Kippur, which is what the Jews need in order to accept atonement, because Jesus was called the Passover lamb, and that isn't what the Jews needed for atonement. They needed Yom Kippur. So Jesus and Judas created Yom Kippur, but it was hidden to the end of the age. I've been speaking about that along with other things in my videos. And so you will hear that, and you'll hear me talking about a different reason why it is that Jesus came, because there was more to it than what you understand, and that's the reason the Jews didn't believe in him, because they didn't realize what he was doing. And if you listen to my other videos, you'll hear more on that. Well, friend, I hate to make it such a short video, but the rain seems to be picking back up, and I'm getting wet sitting here. And it's not that I really mind getting wet, but I have my phone attached to my tripod, and my microphone's out here, and well, I don't think they're all too waterproof. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pack it up. But you can look at my other videos, and I will talk to you about how Jesus saved the Jews from extinction, and they don't understand that yet. It's all there, friend. I put it all there. So just go take a look and you'll see it. All right, friend? Well, I love you because my Father loves you, and may God bless you and yours.